The Eternal Fall by Jojo Northwood. The Eternal Fall. Chapter 3. The First Temptation. A Forbidden Invitation. Atlantis glittered under the celestial moons, its golden streets alive with celebration. Tonight was a night of reverence and excess, a festival honoring the gods. The city's elite gathered in the royal palace, draped in silk and adorned with rare jewels, their laughter mingling with the music of lyres and flutes. Wine flowed like rivers, and whispers of sin danced between nobles like unseen ghosts. From his vantage point in the shadows, Seriphus watched her. Princess Althea. She stood near the towering marble columns of the grand hall, draped in sheer white silk embroidered with gold, the fabric flowing over her curves like liquid moonlight. Jewels shimmered at her throat, but nothing was more radiant than the defiant fire in her eyes. She was a vision, a temptation he had no right to crave. And then, as if the gods were testing his resolve, she turned and met his gaze. A flicker of recognition, a challenge. Then, without looking away, she disappeared through a side door. An invitation, a warning. Seriphus hesitated, his body taut with restraint. He should not follow. He could not. But he did. The fall begins. The chamber was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of exotic incense. She stood by the window, bathed in moonlight, her back to him. "You followed," she said softly, without turning. Seriphus took a measured step forward, his heart pounding against his ribs like a war drum. "You wanted me to?" Silence. Then she slowly turned to face him, her dark eyes unreadable. "Tell me, Seriphus, what are you?" The question sliced through him. She had sensed it, that he was not like other men. He could not answer. She stepped closer, unhurried, her silk robes whispering against the floor. "I should fear you." "You should," he murmured, his voice rough. "And yet—" She tilted her head, watching him like a predator testing its prey. "You are the only man I do not fear." A deep hunger twisted inside him, ancient and uncontrollable. She reached for him, her fingers grazing the fabric of his tunic, testing. Seriphus grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but not unkind, a last warning. "Althea," he rasped, "this cannot happen." "Then leave." The challenge hung between them, and he did not leave. She stepped closer, pressing against him, her breath warm against his jaw. "You think I do not see it? The way you look at me?" His control shattered. With a growl, he slammed her against the stone pillar, his mouth crashing onto hers. She gasped against his lips, her fingers fisting in his tunic, pulling him closer instead of pushing him away. His hands roamed, tracing the curve of her waist, memorizing the shape of her body even as his mind screamed to stop. But he could not. He would not. She moaned as his lips trailed down her throat, her head falling back in surrender. "Seriphus." The sound of his name from her lips sent a bolt of raw desire through him. He lifted her, pressing her against the cold stone, pinning her between the wall and his need. Her legs wrapped around him, the silk of her robe slipping from her shoulder, exposing bare, golden skin to his hungry gaze. "Tell me to stop," he growled, his voice dark with restraint. She cupped his face, her eyes burning with the same fire he felt. "Don't you dare." Their lips met again, but this time there was no hesitation, no restraint. His hands explored her body, worshipping every inch of her like a man starved. She gasped as he tore away the last of her silks, bearing her completely to him. "Gods, you are perfect," he murmured against her skin, his lips, his hands, his body consuming her. She arched against him, breathless. "Then take me." And he did. They burned together, their passion igniting like a wildfire that could never be tamed. He lost himself in her, in the feel of her, the taste of her, the way she whispered his name like a prayer. And as they reached the precipice of ecstasy, something deeper stirred within them, something beyond flesh, beyond time, a connection that had existed long before this moment, and would exist long after. The unforgiving aftermath. When it was over, they lay tangled in the moonlight, their bodies sated, their souls forever changed. But reality was already creeping back in. Seriphus stared at the ceiling, guilt warring with pleasure. "We should not have done this," he whispered. Althea turned to him, tracing the lines of his chest with lazy fingers. "Then why does it feel like we were always meant to?" His throat tightened. Because she was right. But the gods would not forgive them for this, and neither would King Velian.